Do you know how bad it would have been if they forgot what was on there?
That would be horrible. Technically, they did forget because they disobeyed it.
Welcome to Exodus chapter
25.
25. So what's happening in 25?
Four things. Offerings,
Alright?
ark, table, lampstand. Those
Nice.
4 things.
Okay, cool.
Boom. We will put a picture on the screen of the 3 things that we'll be talking about. But the offerings were basically the materials they needed for the things they had to make.
Materialistic things to worship God.
Yeah, that's actually literally what happened.
What?
They had gold, acacia wood, blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, fine linen, goat hair, ram skin dyed red, and so forth, because they were used to make the tabernacle and everything else. And one of the first things that's made was the ark.
And it shows the difference between the old covenant and the new covenant.
Why?
Because we don't need materialistic things to worship God.
Oh, that's true. You can worship him anywhere.
Anywhere, anytime, any place, anyhow.
John 4, they will worship in truth and spirit.
There you go.
But the ark features in Raiders of the Lost Ark. So I think everyone will know what it looks like if I just reference the ark in Indiana Jones 1.
Indiana Jones 1, yeah. But it does not act like that as it did in there. It's just a good representation of how it looked like.
Yeah. It's actually really well done, in my opinion, the one in the movie. But there's no mention of ghosts that will come and melt your face. If you open it and if you keep your eyes closed, somehow you survive.
I should rewatch it and see the reason why it melted and that kind of stuff.
They actually used wax figures, I think, to do the melting effect, and it looked horrifying. But in any way, this was made out of acacia wood, and it was gold overlaid over the entire thing. And
Acacia wood.
Acacia wood.
Acacia.
Is that if that's how you pronounce it?
Oh.
Acacia wood. They actually have a note here. The acacia tree provided hard wood that was strong and couldn't be eaten by insects. So it was a good wood to use.
Okay, interesting.
And this represented God's presence. A lot of these things represented God's presence. Mm-hmm. But there were 2 angels called cherubims over the mercy seat, the covering of the ark.
Mercy seat.
They call it the mercy seat. So it was technically his throne in a way. And then it symbolizes that there are angels near God's throne, and this was a physical symbolism of that.
That's
kind of cool if you think about it, because Revelation, they worship him and there's angels around his throne. So this is just a small representation of what's actually happening.
Okay, and in Exodus 31, they actually say how it came to be, if I recall correctly.
Exodus 31.
But that we're doing next year.
That is the 2 people who made it and the Sabbath.
Oh.
But yeah, here is the instructions of how it needs to be made. Like very specific lengths and width and height.
Wow,
everything.
Okay.
God was very specific on how it had to be made. There's another thing about the ark that I wanted to say. The stone tablets were put inside, the 10 Commandments, the pot of manna, and Aaron's staff.
So they had to memorize the 10 Commandments before they put it in there.
Probably.
They should have somewhere maybe they made an extra note.
They definitely, most likely did write it
on a scroll.
On a scroll. I think Moses actually wrote it on a scroll because he wrote Exodus. Yeah. So he must have looked at the tablet.
Written it. Otherwise, do you know how bad it would have been if they forgot what was on there?
That would be horrible. Technically, they did forget because they disobeyed it.
They did forget, but like Moses also forgot. Everyone or recalled incorrectly.
Ooh. Yeah, because that's what happens when you transfer things orally. It gets messed up.
It gets every time you recall something, it might actually be altered some way.
Very easily. So I believe that he wrote it down on a scroll before they put it in the ark. That's what I believe. The pot of manna was there to preserve it, to show that this is what they ate while being in the wilderness. And you asked, how long did it last? I have no idea.
Apparently it was preserved by the holiness of whatever.
By the holiness of God?
The holiness of God.
Apparently it was there to be for generations and generations, but I don't know how many generations. And also the ark went missing after the time of Jeremiah. And you read about it again in Revelation, in heaven. Okay. So somewhere I think God took it away.
And when was in timeline wise? When was Jeremiah? Was it after, during John, or after John?
Which John?
The John the Baptist.
It was way before him.
Oh, okay. So
when it was the time of exile.
Okay, so my theory is that the ark was actually there when Jesus died in the temple of the holiness, where the veil tore.
I don't know. It's a good question.
I believe it was there because why was it specifically that veil that tore?
Because it shows that we can now enter God's presence.
Yes, and it shows we can enter God's presence, but what was behind that veil?
Likely the ark.
Likely the ark, so that means whatever was in the ark, which is the Holy Spirit or God, it actually tore the veil to get through to Jesus. Therefore, I believe that the ark doesn't have its deadly power anymore.
Oh, you're talking about the thing that not only the Levites could touch it.
Yeah, only the Levites could have touched it, but because the veil was torn, there was nothing in between anymore to separate
I see what you
us
mean.
from God.
Oh, that's an interesting point.
And the ark was there, I believe.
Okay, well, that's actually pretty cool.
Never mentioned, but I believe it was
that's
there.
That's actually very cool. So, yeah, I don't know if it was there or not, but I find that very interesting because the symbolism and everything does make sense. It's just funny because the last time you read it about in the Old Testament is Jeremiah 3:16, and then you only read about it again in Revelation. Then it's in heaven. So apparently it's in heaven. Well, it is in heaven. It says so in, I think, Revelation 4. So this was a very important symbolism of the Old Covenant. And then next up is the table. But not just any table. A gold table that also had poles at the side so they could pick it up. And there was the bread, 12 pieces of bread.
12 pieces of bread that had to like cycle through, or was it all also like preserved on top?
It was fresh every week.
Fresh every week. Okay.
And it was 12 of them.
For the 12 disciples.
No, 12 tribes.
12 tribes. But 12 is such a significant number.
It is a significant number, and there's 12 months in the year.
That was the Gregorian calendar.
Gregorian.
Yeah.
Is that what we're using?
Yeah.
I thought it was the Roman calendar.
No, it's called the Gregorian calendar.
Okay. That's cool. 12 is a significant number, and I can't remember what it means.
The guy's name was Gregorian.
Really? Gregorian. That's an interesting name. Actually, now that we're talking about it, I just want to see the biblical meaning of the number 12, because 12 is very popular in the Bible.
7 and 12 and 8.
It means divine order, completeness, and perfection. Like the 12 tribes, like the 12 disciples, or the 12 gates, the 12 angels, the 12 minor prophets, the 12 unleavened cakes, 12 years of Jacob's servitude, and so forth. So it was very symbolic, and only the Levitical priests could eat from this table. Even though there's a story where David ate from that table. He and his men, his army, were hungry, and they ate from that table.
Slay.
Because David was from Judah, not Levi. And when Jesus and his disciples took the grain and ate it on the Sabbath, the Pharisees were angry about it, or the scribes. And then he said, have you never read that David ate from the bread of presence, or from the table of the holy bread? And then they couldn't say anything about it.
Wow.
So he references back to that.
Wow.
And showing that Jesus is above the Sabbath. Sabbath was made for man, not man for Sabbath.
Yes.
Which is always important to remember, because they didn't understand what Sabbath actually means. That's why Jesus constantly made the argument, if your donkey or a kid falls into a hole, would you just leave them there? You would actually help them out.
Yeah.
You would use the Sabbath to do good. And it was always ironic to me that whenever he healed someone, they got angry about it. Aren't they supposed to be happy for that person?
There is selfish reasons for their hierarchy type of way. Their status, their entitlement is like their pride. And that was violated every time when Jesus did something that they could not do or try to do but failed. So that's what I believe. And also they were very much set in their ways.
I agree. That's exactly what happened. The last part is the lampstand, which you probably have seen. It's that candlestick that goes like this, and then one at the end. 7 candles, and it represents completeness. And earlier, before we started recording, I mentioned that there's also 7 candles or 7 stars in Revelation, and it represents the 7 spirits of God, which I know sounds confusing.
Sounds very confusing until we did our research.
So, if you go to Isaiah 11, it talks about the different aspects of the Holy Spirit. Spirit of the Lord, wisdom, understanding, counsel, might, knowledge, and fear of the Lord. So it's different aspects of the Holy Spirit. He brings wisdom, he brings understanding to the Bible. He counsels by comforting. Might, he gives bravery. Knowledge, so you understand what to do in life. And then fear of the Lord is to have respect and reverence for him. And of course, Spirit of the Lord is the Holy Spirit himself.
Yes. Because when you mentioned it the first time, I was like, what? Isn't there only supposed to be 3? And then when I started putting the puzzles together, like, maybe it's like the traits, aspects of the Holy Spirit, because it is a spirit. So that's why it would be called spirits.
Yeah. And it's mentioned also in Revelation 1:4, 3:1, 4:5, and 5:6, if you want to look it up, about the 7 spirits of God, because it's very interesting and should definitely be understood, because otherwise people are like, wait, there are 7 spirits, but this is what it actually means.
It's 7 traits of the Holy Spirit.
7 traits of the Holy Spirit. It's like when they say there's the spirit of jealousy. It's the concept of
the byproduct.
Jealousy, the byproduct of it, or the spirit of lust, the spirit of gossip. It's, I don't know how to explain it. It's the thing that drives that sin, and a power that is over that sin.
Yeah, that's another tangent to go through.
Yeah. Okay. We'll not go into that tangent, but this was the candlestick that had to always be burning, and the reason why is because it was a reminder that God was always with his people. So fire is actually a representation of God's presence as well, because he was in the burning bush.
Yes.
There were tongues of fire in Acts when the Holy Spirit was poured out.
I wonder if it was literally like seeing tongues on
I also
fire.
wondered about that, like a little tongue, and then the tip of the tongue was on fire. I don't know how it was. The one image in Action Bible just represents it as a fire above their heads.
The emoji.
Like the emoji, yes. And then also there was the pillar of cloud and the pillar of fire. So fire is very much a representation of God's presence, because it's consuming and it's powerful.
Does that mean if you just like fire that you're just like basically like to look at God, basically?
In a way, yeah. But they also said if you look at fire, it makes you sleepy. That's what I heard, or at least in the book, in this movie Narnia, the person looked at fire and then they fell asleep.
Yeah, because it's usually at nighttime, so you're tired by that, and it's comforting, and it's also there's a lot of things in there, but we can
Anyway,
another tangent.
Anyway, that's chapter 25. As simple as that. Stay tuned for chapter 26.